Alrighty, what is up, everybody? We got Fran Walsh on episode 16 of Legends Find a Way podcast. My man, how are you today?
I'm doing great, man. Excited to be here. Excited to
Hell
be on.
yes, dude. Me too. Thank you so much, obviously, for joining today. And to be honest with everyone, I'm a little bit late, so if this episode is not as long as it could have been, that's my bad. But we'll always bring Fran back, and we'll just chat more. But dude, let's bring it back. So obviously, right now you're doing all kinds of awesome things, and we've known each other for a minute and a half here. But you are the founder of Opulus LLC. Could you talk to us a little bit more about what that is?
Sure. Opulus is we're a wealth management and financial planning company. My partner Ryan and I actually started it last August. Um, and essentially what we do is our specialty is we work with individuals that are somewhere from their mid to late 20s towards their uh, probably mid to late 40s. So we have a very interesting group that we work with. Most people in our industry are trying to target the pre-retirees, wealthy individuals, whereas we think that our niche of people that we can really help is what we call wealth builders, people that we're trying to help, not the people that are already wealthy, but the people that we're trying to help them get there.
I like that. Wealth builders.
Yeah.
How did you come up with that idea?
Well, it was kind of like an idea of like, well, basically, I'll backpedal real quick. I'll tell
Yeah,
you
please
a
do.
brief history of how Opulus came about.
Please, yeah.
So my first job out of college was I worked at a trading company called SIG, Susquehanna International Group. It's basically a quantitative trading firm in Conshohocken. It's a great company. But essentially what I was doing there is I was working as a trade analyst on a team of domestic equities. And essentially I realized very quickly in that role that like, it's great. I'm around a lot of smart people. I'm learning a lot, but like, I am not the kind of guy that's going to sit like behind a desk all day and crunch numbers. So what I did is I left there and I started working at a very small financial planning company that was called Aspire Wealth Planners. Great company, a lot of good people there, but overall it was something that I knew, hey, like I really like what I'm doing here. I like that I have the ability to help people. I just think that we could do this a little better. So I got really lucky. I met a guy there named Ryan Greiser, who I had fortunately known growing up because he was affiliated with a club called the Maxwell Football Club. Um, so fortunately, I had known him. He's about 10 years older than me. So me and him started playing around with this idea of, hey, would we be able to start our own company? And obviously, like as you know, like when you start your own thing, it's kind of like an idea that you start playing around with, then you start like thinking more and forward, and then you're like, shit, can we actually do this? And eventually we got to a point where we thought like, okay, like we think we'll be able to do this. And we started playing around with ideas, and we like originally we had this name that we were going to be called like, I forget, we are going to be like 1842, like financial or so, I don't know, whatever the idea is. But eventually we got on with this marketing company, and we told them about what our goal is, the kind of people we want to work with. And they basically gave us a bunch of ideas as to what they thought our company should be called. And one of the names was Opulus. And we asked like, what is Opulus? And they said, it's actually a word we made up. It's a play on the word opulence, which means to live an abundant life. And because our whole philosophy is trying to help our clients get to a point where they can live an abundant life, we thought, okay, like that's like a very cool story. So then we went with Opulus, and then we created the logo up here, and that was it. That's how Opulus was born. So then in August of last year, we got rolling, and fortunately, it's been going well so far.
Dude, I did not know that. So that's the vision of your company then, is to help create abundance in other people's lives, right?
Yep.
More or less. So that's exciting. I did not know that. And I love the way that came about. Here's my question. And for everyone else, I mean, how old are you, by the way?
25.
So
25.
25.
And I think Ryan's 34. Yeah, and I'm 25.
So 25, and you're doing your own business in a niche that is, let's say, predominantly people that are probably a little older, more like Ryan's age for the most part, it seems. Yeah.
Even Ryan's very young. So I think the average advisor is about 52, I think. Like
wow.
Or something, but most of the advisors you see are probably like in their 60s. It's something that I think as you go along over the next like 10, 15 years, you'll probably see more younger people starting to take over as, I think a lot of people that are like our age are starting to take more advantage of trying to really capitalize on their finances and take advantage of their younger earning years.
Right.
So I think you might see more people our age getting into the world, but right now it's a very older demographic that runs the industry.
That's crazy. That's like twice your age.
Yeah,
Dude, Right. So there's 100 questions I have for you in that regard, but I want to backpedal even more because, I mean, obviously your story didn't start here. So like, how did Fran Walsh even get involved in the financial sector? Was that something you wanted to always do? Like, I know you have a rigorous routine you do for yourself training wise, and like you have a lot of things going on. How did you like come into this place? Like, where does your story start in that regard?
Sure. So I guess, I mean, I wouldn't say I was like, I dreamed of doing finance, right? But I don't think any kid when they're grown up is like, what do you want to do when you're up? I want to be a financial advisor.
Right.
But I think like math was one of the things I was always good at, right? And I think I had decent people skills. And fortunately, I was in a position where I was able to play football at Villanova University. And I don't know if I would have gotten in on my own, but football helped me get into the school, the business school there. So I was a finance major. Um, and I was like one of those guys that was like never going to be in the corporate world. Like I was always in those classes and I was like, dude, like I just don't think this is for me. So I always kind of knew I wanted to do something. I just didn't know what it was, you know.
Right.
I always had that like entrepreneurial mindset where I was always doing that bullshit where you're trying to be like, you're in college,
Yeah.
like, oh, can we come up with a company? Like, is there something we could do to make
Yes. Yes.
but I just never knew what it was going to be.
Right.
So yeah, fortunately, like I had a good financial background just from Villanova, all the things I learned there. And then I had a couple good internships with some financial companies. And then obviously once I left Villanova and I got into like finance at that first job I had, just took a little while for me to figure out what the best thing for me to do was, but definitely think that I had a very fortunate path that led me to this industry. And like, fortunately I had a very good educational background to be able to get me here.
Got you. So more or less, it's just something that, well, obviously, so you always kind of had this entrepreneurial feeling. So where do you think that stemmed from, though? Is that just something you just had a feeling of, just like intuition wise, or like you just, I don't know, like can you explain that? Because I think there's a lot of people in college that maybe have that, who are also really smart, similar to you, and maybe are in good schools, but they're like, well, I'm in a good school, so like this and that, and it might take them away from potentially starting something really amazing. So what is your mindset behind all that?
So, you know, I don't know. I don't know, to be honest. I can kind of piece some parts together, but I don't know to be exact. I know, you know, you grow up, like everyone's like the dream is like, I think a lot of like, we're in a very entrepreneurial minded time right now, right? A lot of
Oh
people
yeah.
want to be entrepreneurs. A lot of people are starting to make huge strides into having their own things. But I think our parents and our grandparents, that is not like something that was the norm. Like I remember when I left my first job, which was like at a great company for like this financial advising company, I remember my mom hated it. She was like, absolutely not. Like, you're not going to like, that's a terrible idea. And then when I told her I was leaving that company to start my own, like that was like all hell broke loose.
Oh
Um,
no.
but I think I always had this mindset. I have one uncle who's a very successful guy. He's got a couple companies. He lives down in Florida, extremely successful. And I always kind of looked up to him. And I remember I have like a weird, vivid memory of like riding bikes with him one day when I was like 14 years old. And he was asking me like what I wanted to do, if I wanted to play football in college. And I was like, yeah. And I remember he just told me, he goes, the only thing I can tell you is when you get out of college, never work for anyone else. He goes, all you're ever going to do is make money for someone else. And he like had his own companies, and that always like stuck with me, that I never wanted money and I kind of wanted to do my own thing.
Interesting.
But I think it was a combination of like the entrepreneurial time we're in, where like people want to do their own thing. They want to have their own brand, kind of. And I also, I've just naturally always been like a leader in different areas of my life. I always kind of wanted to be my own boss per se, where I
Right.
think I have the drive and the discipline to do those things, because I'm a very disciplined person in all areas of my life, as you are.
Right.
You know, sometimes like to a fault, where like, you know, your girlfriend
Right.
hates you for it, where she's, but in business terms, it's always a good thing. So I think it was just a combination of things that led me to be that way.
Interesting. So I that's so to me the most fascinating thing that you mentioned is that you said when you said it, you said you had a weird, vivid memory. Weird meaning it's like kind of interesting how that was the thing that stuck, but interesting because it was the thing that kind of always reminded you, like, you know, he's right. I don't really want to do that. Like, I don't really want to help make some muscle, right? So that's interesting, which I love. And the seed was planted. So shout out to your uncle, right?
Yeah.
Isn't it? It's
Yeah.
so weird that, you know, because, you know, at the time he knew what he was telling you, but he did, but it's always interesting as the mentor, you don't really know what is the right combination of words or vibrations, if you will, because words are just vibrations in that regard. That's
Yeah.
going to stick with somebody, or they remember it like no matter what, which is just such a weird thing that I guess is like, is part of the human experience, is just like trying to figure out like, what is the thing that's going to stick? But here's my question, because obviously, at 25, I mean, dude, like to have your own company in this sector, right? Like you said, is going to be younger as things go on, but even still at the moment isn't. So you talked about discipline. How has that played out for you in your life and leading up into your business as well?
Yeah. So I think, naturally when a lot of people that came from like an athletic background, you're naturally going to be a very disciplined person. And I think personally, I think the most important aspect in any person's life is to have extreme like discipline in almost everything you do. Um, whether it's like for me, like when I wake up, like the first thing I have to do every morning is like I have to work out. Like it drives me like crazy almost, because it's like you almost like can't like handle like the rest of your day if you're like, okay, I didn't start my day like with a win. Like that's kind of like the way I have to start all my days. So, and I think if you could start your day like very disciplined in an aspect like that, then when you go into things like business, it's easy. It's like if you're working out, it's like, God damn, I got to run another 5 miles today. Whereas, with work, it's like being disciplined is just, okay, I just got to make sure I reach out to X, Y, and Z today. It's simple. You just got to be disciplined. You got to know what you have to do and you got to go do it. But naturally, I think that's just a super like important aspect in all things of your life, because the only way you're ever going to like succeed is by doing that stuff, because it's never like, you're never going to very rarely do companies succeed because they make huge jumps and they get lucky along the way, right? It is a slow, like disciplined, everyday effort, and then you climb the ladder like that. You go like that. No one takes off overnight. I mean, there's only a few like books for that reason. There's only a couple companies that can take off overnight, but everyone else has to do it consistent, disciplined effort way.
And where did you learn this discipline? Through sports?
Yeah, I would say probably sports. I mean, like my dad, so like my dad passed away when I was like 13 years old. He had always instilled like this in us. It was like when we came home every night, it was like the first thing you did when you got home from school was you did your homework. Like something that like every parent did. But like if you just apply those principles throughout your life, it was like you just learn quickly. It's like you wake up, you make your bed in the morning, you go brush your teeth, you do all the things you're supposed to do every day, and you learn that as a kid. And then when you get older, it's like those things get easy, and then you can apply that same discipline to the things that are actually hard, like working out every day when you don't want to, like eating healthy when you want to eat all that shit that's not good for you, right? That's my personal hardest thing, but it's about staying disciplined and doing all that stuff.
So your dad helped instill that when you were younger?
No, of course, yeah. I mean, he was like my hero, and I think that was like where all of it stemmed from.
Right.
So absolutely.
That's powerful, dude. And I think it's definitely played a huge impact 10 years later, right?
Yeah. No, absolutely.
But as you can tell, I'm sure. And here's the thing, like, dude, listen, you're an entrepreneur. So you see, and you're on social media. So you see all the other entrepreneurs. So at least I'm sure to an extent. I know you're very focused, so you probably don't see anywhere near as much as someone who's scrolling all day might. But what are your thoughts on all the new entrepreneurs that are entering the fray that may or may not actually understand what it takes?
I mean, there's a couple things I would say. One, I would say in today's world, the transparency is the most important thing you can have as an entrepreneur. I think in a world of social media like we're in today, I think people can see through a lot of bullshit. So I think you got to be honest. And I mean, like that's one of the things we pride ourselves on is that, hey, like we're going to tell you when things are good. We're going to tell you when things are bad too. Whereas like a lot of people in our industry, they're never going to tell you when it's bad because they don't want you to leave them. But as far as entrepreneurs go, I think transparency is the number one most important thing. And secondly, it's that, dude, I think the most eye-opening thing for me was in being an entrepreneur was the highs and lows are so much higher and lower when you're an entrepreneur than when you just work somewhere, right? Yeah, everyone's got good days, everyone's got bad days. But when you're an entrepreneur, it's like one day you can be on cloud nine. You're like, holy shit, we just landed this client. We're going to the goddamn moon. Like we're going to take off. And then the next day, it's like chaos erupts. You're like, oh my God, are we going to make it this week? What the hell? But that's where like discipline comes in with it. You got to like, it's very hard you got to keep that level head. You got to really kind of focus and be like, okay, I got to stick to what I know. I got to keep grinding, keep doing a little bit every day, get 1% better every single day. And just know that it's going to pay off in the long run. If you believe in what you do and you know that people believe in it and you're honest about what you do and you know you can actually help people in whatever your product or system is, then you're going to be successful if you put in the time and the effort and you do all the right things.
I love that. And I love especially, I love what you were saying about that last bit of just putting the time in and getting 1% better every day. Where did the 1% better thing come from?
Dude, I don't know. I'm one of those guys that I love Joe Rogan. So he's
Okay.
I listen to him like almost probably every day at some point. I listen to him when I work out, and I don't know if the 1% came from him. It might have come from like The Rock or someone, but like one of the guys he had on was David Goggins.
Oh yeah.
Like David Goggins, he got me into like running, all this shit. But like so many of his quotes are like I tried to like add them to my life because like that guy's like such an inspirational dude. So I'm sure it came from one of those guys that was on him, the 1% thing. But it's something it's important for everyone to add to their own lives.
Right. Because if you get 1% better compounded over time, you're going to be 1,000% better, right?
Exactly.
Or 1,000,000% better, or 100, or whatever it is. So here's my question then. So if you're watching Goggins, he's inspiring you to run. How much do you run in a week right now?
Oh man. So another thing that I know you know this about me, but probably people like I'm like very weird. Like I like to live in like every month I like to do something like a challenge wise. Like, but so this month my challenge I did it with my best friend Chris. We basically did so every day we had to do 2 45-minute workouts. On top of that, we had to read every day. So for me, reading is not something that I like to do. So we had to read every day for 30 minutes, which was not something I enjoyed.
Bro, I have a book for you. This is like beaming through me right now. I have to say this. You have to read this book.
I watched your thing this morning. I'm absolutely going to read it.
That book would make you very happy. Continue.
So we had to do 2 45-minute workouts a day, had to read every day. In those 2 workouts, we had to burn 1,500 calories, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it's actually a lot when you like think about it. We just
that is a lot.
And we couldn't eat sugar or drink alcohol, which is I mean, in quarantine sucks. So it was like a pretty tough challenge.
Wow.
But to burn that 1,500 a day, I had to run way more than I wanted to. I was probably running like 5 miles a day. So I would guess I'm probably right around 30, 35 a week right now.
Damn.
So somewhere in there. Yeah. Usually like 5 a day, and I'll do like one bigger one on Saturday usually.
Holy cow.
Yeah.
How's your body feeling from all that?
Dude, to be honest, I would think after the first week, because like, you know, you're in your normal routine if you work out every day except Sunday is what most people do. But just having that Sunday, like that first Monday, like you're like, God damn, dude, my body's hurting. But after a while, it's funny. Like you kind of just become like, I think like it's almost like you're callousing. Like one of the things I got to notice is you're callousing your mind when you do things right. Is like, but like you're calloused your body if you keep like just beating it up every day to like where like in the first couple weeks it really sucks, but then after like towards the end of the month, I'm like, dude, I feel like I'm a machine. Like I can go out there and do like anything at this point. So I love it. It's probably something I'm going to honestly continue doing until I really start hurting. But it's been great, dude.
Yeah, dude. I'm a huge fan of the runs. I love getting outside. It beats work. I can't go to the gym anymore. It actually is like so boring. It makes me just not want to do anything.
How much you been running? I see, dude, you've been putting in some big ones.
Put it this way. My 3 miles back home have turned into 6. Like that's the new norm. I usually don't run less than 6. Just because like, dude, out here, there's so much. When you get out here, there's so many places to run that are epic. Like, dude, you'll be running through the desert, and then there's mountains, and you'll be running through near the river, and then all of a sudden there's a forest. Like, it changes terrain, and then the best part is there's so many trails, so they get really windy and narrow, so it feels like you're like running in like the bush. It's like a gauntlet. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
it's sick.
Running's
so
addictive, isn't it?
Yeah, so you're just like trudging through the freaking forest, and you got like the hills, and the hills are killing you. Because because that's the thing out here that is no joke, dude. On any given run, bro, you could have between 500 and 1,500 elevation gain, and that shit is tough. Yeah. So
the way down is just as bad as the way up. Because on the way down, it crushes you in your quads.
It was ridiculous. So I've probably been running like at least 20 a week,
wow,
between 20 and 30. Yeah, it's been good. some days I haven't, if I haven't felt it, I'm not really that worried about it. I'm kind of taking the quarantine to my advantage and being like, I'm just not going to crush my body like I've been doing the last 15 years of my life.
Yeah.
But I will say that, like, 3 is now 6. So if I do 4 runs a week, I'm already like encroaching almost 30 miles just because I'm running longer. But dude, like but I only do trail runs.
Yeah.
Like there's only trails to run. Like I can't run
What
on
kind
the
of shoes
cement
are you
shit.
wearing for that?
I'm actually wearing my Vibrams mostly, so it is pretty legit on my body because I'm really
What
absorbing a
is this?
lot of that.
Are those the toe shoes?
Yeah, yeah,
Jeez,
yeah.
dude, you're running like big runs in those. That's crazy.
Well, what I found is that the thing that I like about them is that I feel like it does. I feel like it puts a little more pressure maybe on my knees, but it takes a lot of pressure off my low back.
Yeah.
I feel like the pressure from my shoes gets shocked in my low back, but with the Vibrams, I feel like it's more in my knees. I could be wrong. I'll have to ask my physical therapist friend. But I really like them, and they also give me way less blisters. I
Got
don't
it.
know if you saw a couple weeks back, I had a gnarly blister on my
I
big
didn't
toe.
see that one.
Dude. It was like that big.
Big.
It was nasty. But anyway, I think this was all coming from you running. I asked you how much you've been running, et cetera. So I mean, obviously the exercise is a huge part of your routine as well, because obviously we both know routine is super important to an entrepreneur and to you getting consistent, being consistent, and then letting that play out in the way you treat your clients with consistency there as well, which I think is important. But I want to retrack for a second and come back to the transparency thing, because I think that that's a really important topic. And I'm very curious in the financial world, especially during this time, like you said, how are you navigating that with transparency when this whole COVID thing went down? Because I think there's a lot to learn here.
Sure. So, I mean, naturally, like with something like Corona, right, there's a lot of unknowns. So, like when we talk about transparency, like one of the most important things is to tell people hey, we don't know. Like when people ask us, like people will be like, is the market going to crash? Is the market going to come back? Or the X, like they'll ask us 1,000 different questions, right? The answer is like, I don't know. What do we know is like, hey, we know like this. What we know is right now, um, things are starting to turn around, right? Which is great. Are things going to flare back up again in a couple months when everything reopens? Like we don't know. But what we know is like as long-term investors, which most people are, you can't stress about the short term, because if you're a long-term investor, we know that hey, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years from now, you're going to look back and this is not going to play a significant impact in your life at that point. Right now, it seems like a big deal. Everyone seems all crazy about it. But if we look back, if you're a long-term investor for 10, 20, 30 years, this is not going to be significant at the end of the day. But the most important thing is just being honest with people about that stuff. You know what I mean? A lot of advisors, I think, get scared that they're going to lose clients, or that clients might, like leave them or pull their money and go all cash, and they might lose clients. But you can't think about it that way, right? Because the worst case scenario is if you tell people one thing and like you're way wrong and they knew that like you would just lie to them to keep them, like that's never an efficient way to run a business.
Right.
What people appreciate is honesty. And if you're honest with them, whether it's good, bad, or indifferent, you just call people to honestly tell them something that you think, or that, hey, you think this may be beneficial for them. Not only are they going to be very loyal to you in the long run, but they're also much more likely to refer you to people. Like they're much more likely to
Yeah.
be an advocate for you.
Right.
Because some of our best clients are people that, hey, we've just told them honestly, like, hey, we don't know if we're a good fit for you. Like, we don't know if if we're the best fit for what you're looking for. Like, we can point you in the right direction of someone who might be, and people really appreciate that. And we've gotten like referrals of that. So, I think it's just more important than pretty much anything. Like when you look at like the financial advisor world, right? Like at the end of the day, everyone's always going to be close, right? There's always so many different portfolios you can have, like all this
Right.
stuff. At the end of the day, it's all kind of similar. What's really important is, hey, like, is your advisor always in contact with you? Are they always reaching out? Are they always making sure they're looking out for your best interest? Which actually leads me to another good point that I think I always want to make sure people are very aware of. If you're ever looking to work with a financial advisor, always ask the one question: are they a fiduciary? A fiduciary basically means that advisor by the SEC has to act in your best interest. Not
By the
every
what?
they have to act in your best interest.
Okay.
So essentially there's two different kinds of worlds, right? There's what we're in is which is called the registered investment advisory world, but then there's what's called also like broker dealers. So basically, not every advisor has to act in the best interest of the client. Basically, they can go sell certain things and they can get paid a commission on a stock or a different mutual fund or something like that. But the way that we have to act and that all registered investment advisors have to act is you have to be a fiduciary, meaning everything you have to do has to be in the best interest of the client. Basically, I mean, you have to be looking out for them. Everything you're doing is what you believe is the best case like for them at that time.
Gotcha.
So it's just an important question for everyone to ask if they're working with an advisor, because make sure that that person is acting in the best interest of you, not themselves. Because not all advisors have to do that, which is unfortunate. That's why this industry tends to have like, it doesn't have the best rep because there's a lot of people in it that look out for themselves. They just want to sell people something. They want to make their quick money and then they never call that person again, which is why it gets a bad rep. So you always want to make sure you want to ask that question because those people are much more likely to be working with you long-term. They're going to do the right job for you. And I'm not saying all those people are bad, by the way. Right? There's some good people that aren't fiduciaries. I'm just saying that they don't have to hold that same standard.
Right.
So you just want to make sure that standard's there so you know.
Yeah. No, I love that, dude. Thank you for sharing that.
But yeah, so it all ties back into that transparency thing of being honest. And, I mean, I think it's a lot easier for people to be honest when they have to be. So that's why that point of working with a fiduciary is very important.
So for you, transparency, it sounds like, honesty and integrity are like big for you.
Yeah.
Is that something that's always been around in your life, or is that something that you learned through like the different businesses that you worked for or, out of college? Like, where did that all come into play?
I mean, I think it's very important in almost pretty much everything you do. You know what I mean? Whether it's it's relationships with your family or your friends or your girlfriend. Like, it's just one of the most important things. I mean, if you're always honest, they can be mad at you, but they can't be that mad. like I remember even when you were in high school. I remember I was a sophomore in high school, and I remember being I remember you tell your mom you're going somewhere, and I remember one day I was a sophomore, and I'm like, you know what, Mom, this girl's having a party. I'm going there. If something ever happened to me, I want you to know where I actually am. And she never gave me a hard time again about where I was going or staying out. If it was at a guy's house or a girl's house. So I always think back to that. And I'm like, you know what? It's just always more important to be honest, because at the end of the day, what's the worst thing that can happen? Whereas if you lie, a lot of bad things could happen.
Right. Dude, that's such a great little story. I love that.
Yeah. So I always love telling that story because it's my sisters probably hear that and they're like, Jesus Christ. But yeah, no, for me, it was a good learning point early to be okay. I mean, if you tell the truth all the time and you're honest about things, then you're never going to really screw up. And, I mean, you can screw up, but at least you're being honest with people about stuff.
Right. And I just think that that's just a testament to you and what you've done. And again, it's interesting, the different things that you build your life on, the different values that you hold dear to you. We're talking discipline, we're talking integrity, we're talking honesty, how those play out in your personal life and professional life, and having the unity and synchronicity there clearly has helped you become successful at your age. I mean, again, you're half the age of the average person in your industry, which is fucking fantastic. But again, having the youth, you also have the vision of what's going to come because you're, closer to the, you see from the perspective of someone who's younger and grew up with technology where new things are going to be going, and you can kind of play both. You can do the classic handshake and you can also do the digital Zoom, and they're both kind of simultaneous for you. But I want to switch over to something because you were kind of starting to bleed into something I want to talk about next, which was some basic tips for financially for people during this time or just in general. What are your three biggest tips right now for people who are into or want to become investors or are investors already, or maybe they're just trying to figure out how to get through Corona? What are some thoughts you have on this? Because I'm sure you're dealing with it.
Okay. So, I mean, the one thing I'll talk about, some people probably get driven crazy by this, but if anyone wants to look up our social media page, we're just Opulus LLC on Instagram or
I'll tag it below.
Or Twitter or Facebook. Basically, we post content every week. So pretty much we'll write a blog about a certain subject related financially. I'll make a cool little Instagram post that explains it in 4 or 5 slides for all the non-readers like myself out there. They want to get the quick bullet points and not actually read the whole thing. And then we'll usually post a video later in the week describing what the what the highlights of the blog were. So just quick highlight on that if anyone wants to go check that out. There's a lot of good stuff on there. But probably the most important thing I find, especially with like younger people that are looking to get in that world, is that the number one question we get, or the number one issue we see, is that people are like, they always say this: I have money coming in, it goes out. I don't really know what I'm spending it on. I don't really know what I'm doing. So with that, we have a very basic principle that's pretty like standard across the industry. It's called the 50-20-30 rule. And it's super simple. What you take is you take your after-tax income, because unfortunately, no matter where you live, you cannot control taxes. Everyone pays them. So what you do is you take your after-tax income. 50% of your after-tax income, whether you look at it on a monthly budget, however often you get paid, or annually, 50% of that should go towards your essentials, the things you have to have in your life. I mean, that's your rent or your mortgage, paying your groceries, paying off your car, your basic insurances, all the things that you absolutely need to operate your daily life. The next 20% should go towards your financial goals. So whether that's, saving for a down payment on a house, paying down your student loans, saving into your company's 401k, or investing out on your own, anything that is a financially related goal. And then 30%, we want you to go blow on whatever you want, because that stuff's super important, right? We're not going to be these crazy people that are like, you need to save all your money. Like, we know that lifestyle is an extremely important part of everyone's life. So we take that 50-20-30 principle, right? Now, what is the ideal situation? The ideal situation is that someone comes up to us and we run through this fun little Excel sheet that we make for them. And then someone tells us that they're like, oh my God, I'm doing great. I'm 40-40-20. But what happens most of the time? Most of the time is we see people are like 40% on their essentials, 10% on their financial goals, and then 50% on their discretionary spending. That is what we see more often than anything. Occasionally you'll get the rare person that's very good at saving, but most people are spenders. Even myself, like, I'm a spender. It's natural.
You're a business guy. It's part of it. So you don't value it like maybe someone else might.
Exactly. So the 50-20-30 rule is super important. And the reason we have it that way is, hey, 50% needs to be your essentials. It needs to stay under that, because God forbid you were to ever lose your job. We always recommend having 3 to 6 months of your essentials in an emergency fund, so that hey, if you have an emergency fund of 3 to 6 months, you can cover that 50% that you would normally spend for the next 3 months while you look for a job. So we just think it's super important to be budgeting yourself. You don't have to get crazy with it, right? That's why we say, hey, spend that 30% on whatever you want to spend it on. But if you can take care of the other two things, we know that is going to bring you financial independence over time.
And where did you learn that? Because that's obviously extremely valuable.
So it's kind of, a lot of people like talk about this concept, right? It's just an important, like, we didn't come up with it. It's an extremely popular concept. But we just feel it's super important to emphasize, because when you teach, it all comes back to discipline. Like, when you can discipline yourself to do that, right? Then in your life, say you make 50 grand today and you can follow these rules. Say next week you get a raise, now you're making 65, 75 grand. You keep everything the same. All you do is all your numbers bump up, right? So now you can, if you want to live in the same place, right, great. Now you can just save more money and spend more money on your discretionary. If you get a big bonus and you want to go buy a nice big baller house or whatever you want to do, you can afford to go do that, as long as you stay disciplined with that 50-20-30 principle. Nothing changes as you make more money. Your numbers just get bigger. And it's the same, it doesn't matter if you're a guy who's been working for a year, or if you're a guy who makes millions of dollars, right? Everyone has those same problems with spending versus saving. No one really knows like what they should be doing, which is super interesting. You'd think like some guys that make millions of dollars are like these great, they've got it all figured out. Everyone's the exact same way. Everyone doesn't really know where their money goes. So it's a super simple concept that everyone can apply, and it's super beneficial.
Interesting. So that's one thing. So everyone take notes on this, by the way. Get out your notebooks. We're out here today. It's classes in session. We've got Mr. Fran teaching us the front of the room on Zoom. So what are some other things that you're noticing right now that you think people could potentially gain value from, or that they need to know for this time and navigating it forward? Because let's be real, right? We've had whenever there is I can't even speak. This is funny. Whenever there is a type of crisis like we just had, there's always an aftershock, right? At some point. So like, obviously you got to go backwards to go forwards. So talk to us. Like, what should people be preparing for just in case? Besides a 3 to 6 month fund, which is important.
Prepare for, obviously we're not out of the woods yet, right? Like, just speaking for the general market, like there's still going to be, obviously this year has been crazy, right? At one point, the market was off 35% from the highs. Obviously it's had a crazy rally back within the last couple weeks to where I think we're less than 10% off year to date. We're somewhere around like 8% down. So it's been a very good rally since then.
That's remarkable.
It's been a very good rally, but obviously there's been a lot of optimism in the market as of recent about a vaccine and things going well, about the economy reopening. But obviously that doesn't mean like we're out of the woods yet. Like, it's absolutely a possibility that when things open back up, there could be some major fluctuations again. We just don't know. We don't know what's going to come until there's more information about the virus. We don't know. So basically the number one thing that we always say for people to consider is, if you're going to be investing monies during this time, just know that, like, there's going to be fluctuations over the next couple months or maybe even the next year or two. We don't know how long this thing's going to play out. But we know that, if we look historically on how the U.S. has performed after every major crisis, right? If we look out 1 year, 2 year, 5 years, 10 years, we know 10 years from now, we'll be past this, we'll have moved on, and the market will be much higher than it is today. If we look at a historical scale based on recent pandemics or major crises in the U.S. Doesn't mean that things are going to be great and we're going to have a great 12-year bull run like we just had. No, absolutely not. But for most long-term investors, we usually say, if you can just dollar cost average money is the same way we have that 50, 20, 30 principle.
What's dollar cost average real quick?
So dollar cost averaging is, so basically there's two kinds of ways that most people invest, right? Some people, if they get large bonuses, what they'll do is they'll just dump large sums of money into their investment accounts and they're just buying at whatever the stock price is at that time. Dollar cost averaging is pretty much what people do with like their 401ks, or they can do it on their own. Essentially what it is you're buying either like ETFs, mutual funds, or stocks on a weekly, bi-weekly, or monthly basis. So what happens is, naturally, if we know that over time, the market's going to continue to rise as things grow in the U.S., if you believe in the U.S. economy, right? We know that, if we just buy on an average of like whatever the time interval is, if it's every week, every 2 weeks, every month, we know that, sometimes you're going to buy when the stock's a little high, sometimes you're going to buy when it's a little low, but over time, you're going to be buying at a lower average if that stock continues to rise. So what happens is it takes out the ability to time the market, right? Because, Warren Buffett is the one guy who always says, he says, you can't time the market. If the greatest investor of all time, it tells you market, I promise you, one of the main things we always tell everyone, we promise you can't time the market. We can't do it. Warren Buffett can't do it. I promise you can't do it. So we always tell people, like if you're going to be a long-term investor and you just want to start putting money in each month, dollar cost averaging is a great way to do it for long-term investors.
Got you. Okay. And so during this time, like, what do you think are some things that, if you were going to apply that theory or just in general investing wise, what do you think are some things or some ways that people can get involved in that? Because obviously, I guess things have recouped a lot. I actually wasn't aware it recouped that much. It's kind of crazy. But what are some things that you're thinking and from your end?
Well, I think for every person, it's different, right? There's three things that tie into every person's investment decisions, right? It's what is their risk tolerance, right? So basically, for each person, there's a scale of how risky or aggressive they are and want to be. Depends on their time horizon, right? Like someone that's my age, that's 25 years old, should be investing much differently than someone who's 65 and about to retire. And then it depends also on like people's personal beliefs. Like some people like hate, alcohol or smoking. So it's like, okay, so you want to stay away from companies like that. Or some people don't believe and they don't like the companies like Nike or whatever that have like these slave shop services. And people have all different kinds of people have different beliefs as to what
Right.
like. So for every person, it's different, right? So for each individual, it's just about doing the due diligence on yourself and saying, okay, how much risk do I want to take? How much time do I have? And then what are my personal beliefs on, hey, what could be successful? What do you think is going to succeed over time? But just coming back on the one point I said, I just want to give a quick piece of advice of what we recommend people consider. When you're younger, for any younger people out there, you have a very long time horizon to work, right? So you got 10, 20, 30 years of growth on these money. So for younger individuals in their 20s and even in their 30s, you should be heavily considering investing towards the stock market. As we know, historically, that's going to give you much more growth over long durations of time than the fixed income or bond market. Whereas older individuals that are maybe in their 40s and 50s should be tilted less in stocks and have a little more allocation towards the fixed income and bond market, because we know there's more guarantees on those monies. Hey, they're not going to offer as much growth, but God forbid the market takes a tank when you're about to retire. You want to be heavily more in the things that you know are guaranteed and have might have lesser returns on them than being all in on the market and just trying to time it for when you retire. So it's just always super important to consider those three things before you make any kinds of decisions. But generally, the younger you are, the more aggressive you should be, because you have so much time to invest those monies in for growth. But on the flip side, on any money that is for short-term use, when I'm talking a lot about long-term investing, if you are saving money that you want to buy a house with, or you want to, whatever you're buying an engagement ring, whatever you're doing, if those monies have a short-term goal attached to them, they should not be in the market. Should not be. They should be sitting in cash. You do not want to risk losing that if it's as an important purpose. Just don't even play around with it. Just keep that sucker in your checking account. If you want to put it in a cash alternative where it can have a small percentage of growth on it, that's fine. But don't play around with it if it has a short-term goal attached to it. But anything that's long-term, you don't need it for at least 10 years. That is for future you. If you're a younger individual, you should be more aggressive. As you get older, we start to tilt back. For most people, if you're like 90-10 today, 90% stocks, 10% bonds, as you get older, we tilt back a little bit. You might go 80-20 as you hit 40, then 70-30, then 60-40, and 50-50 when you retire.
Gotcha. Interesting. Good. Thank you so much for that insight. It's powerful. And let's be honest, luckily, most of the people that are listening to this are probably the exact age frame that you are working with people in. So do you have any other insights similar to what you just gave for people that you offer them when they come in or when they talk to you that can help them steer maybe either a little deeper in that direction or some other things that are on like the same plane that are just as important?
There's different,
Yeah, right.
depending on each aspect. But as far as like,
I have a question for you. I have
yeah.
a question. How do you find out your risk tolerance?
So you could take pretty much a questionnaire from any standard firm will have it, or you can look it up online. But essentially, they'll ask you some questions like, okay, if you invested $100 and we told you over a year it was going to be worth between X and Y, and then they gave you like 5 options, which would you be most comfortable with, right? For some people, if they tell you like, oh, but if you invest $100 today, it could be worth 140 or it could be worth 70. Like range, or if you invest $100 today, it could be worth $105 or $95. So like that's like they ask a bunch of different questions like that, and it helps people kind of figure out, okay, am I actually the kind of person who could take on a lot of risk, or am I the kind of person who's going to panic if I start losing money? Because the last thing you want is for people to be aggressive, but they can't handle when times are bad. Like you don't want to be super aggressive, and then the market drops 30%, and all of a sudden you're in panic mode because you need to be able to calm yourself. And that's kind of what we're there for. But it's super important for the clients too to understand that, hey, things aren't going to be all sunshine and rainbows, like there's good times and bad times. That's what happens when you invest in the stock market.
100%. I like that. And I think it's interesting. from my perspective, like so they're in the silo of that test where people are coming up with their answers, how much of those answers are linked to things that they've been through in their lives that they're not maybe aware of, which is a whole other conversation you and I want to have with you at some point, because that's crazy.
I bet you it's totally tied to that.
Oh yeah. So, but it's interesting the way you said it. If you're comfortable with like 95 or 105 versus like 70 to 140, that kind of thing, it was making me think, what would I be comfortable with, right? You know, I feel like I've been a gambler before in my life, right? I remember in college, I legit gambled on playing 2K, man.
Yeah.
I lose a video game because that's the dumbest thing to play against, for sure. One of them, besides sports, my dad always said, he said, "Graham, whenever I gamble on sports, I didn't have to learn from his mistakes, thankfully, right?"
Yeah.
But dude, so I mean, I know you only got like 10 minutes left. I want to make sure you're on point for your thing. Are there any other things that you can think of right now that during this time people should be aware of in the coming months, or like any like little simple hacks or things people can apply? I definitely want to get you back on here at some point to have a more in-depth conversation, because you have a wide array of knowledge. And for, let's be honest, people listening to this podcast, they're in the age demographic where it could be extra valuable.
Sure. No, I mean, yeah, there's a lot more things we could dive into, a plethora of subjects. You know, I mean, we could dive into different things like buying your first house, or how much should you be putting into your 401k, what investment should you be choosing inside that 401k. Like, there's a lot of different topics. Should you buy or lease your car? Like, these are all kinds of things that we go over with people. But I think what I talked about with the 50-20-30 is the most important thing that everyone should do. The first step that they should take is write out all the things in that. And basically by doing that, I think that cash flow is the most important thing. Like, we basically have a tier of things that people should worry about, right? And I think that the most important thing is, number one is cash flow. The second most important is debt management, right? So it's like, so here's the order of things. It goes cash flow, debt management, savings, investing, and that's all people need to worry about today, right? Then the last two tiers are like retirement, income, and estate planning.
Gotcha.
But the first four is all people need to worry about today. But without a doubt, the two most important is cash flow and debt management. But before people even get into like paying off their debts, because, you know, naturally the largest issue kids have today is paying off those student loans. So before you can even figure out if you're able to do that, or when you're going to be able to do that, you got to figure out, okay, do I have a handle on my cash flow, or is all of my money coming into my checking account and then I pay for X, Y, Z, and then I just wait for my next check, which is what most people do. So I guess one piece of advice that I can give in alignment with that is, we always say have names for certain accounts. Like, so when you go into like your PNC,
I like that. I love that.
Name an account bills, name an account like savings or house goal, whatever it is, if you're buying a house, and then name a third account, your fun account, like your discretionary spending. And then what you do is, with those bills, you should tie all of your bills to a credit card, because you should be building good credit, so you know that you're going to pay off those bills every single month. With your financial goals, that should just be sitting in a checking account if it's just savings for a house or whatever you're saving for. If you're investing, obviously it's a different story, but let's just say for the sake of whatever, you're a younger person saving for a house. And then your fun stuff, that account should be tied to a debit card, because we want that to be real time. Whereas your credit card, you can just swipe, but we want your debit card. If we allocate your 30%, if your 30% is $300 a week that you're allowed to spend on whatever you want, tie it to a debit card, because we only want you to spend that $300, right? We want that to be real time for you.
I see what you mean. So if you go over it, then you get knocked.
Exactly. Yeah. You're going out to the bar tonight. You're like, okay, I got $150 I can spend. That's it. Right? Then you wait till the next week. It just teaches you good disciplined habits. So like with bills, tied to your credit card, you build great credit. It'll help you drastically down the line getting financing for all the important things in your life. Savings, those things can go in your checking or savings account, whatever you use. And then your fun account should be tied to a debit card. And obviously if you're married, the same principles apply. You just have two people. So whether you do your monies together or not, it's always different for every specific couple, but the same principles apply. You just tie this X to the credit card. They have a joint savings, and then they have a fun card that they usually each have their own. because
Gotcha.
the way guys spend and the women spend is usually drastically different on the things they like to spend their waste their money on.
Really?
Yeah, yeah,
That's a whole other conversation. Damn.
yeah,
I love it.
yeah, of course.
Dude, well, dude, thank you for all that information. I think that's fantastic. I'm definitely going to be applying that to my life as well, because I know for me, I'm not always the best. Sometimes I just see everything as an investment, right? Which
Yeah,
is kind of the double-edged sword. And I'm like, hey, you know, whatever. I'm 26. Things are good. You know what I mean?
yeah.
So I feel that, and I love the discipline that you exhibit through that, and I think that a lot of people are going to find that as well. I just again wanted to say, dude, thank you very, very, very much for your time today. I know you're a busy guy; you got a lot going on. So at some point soon, we definitely need to do this again.
Yeah, do it again. I'll come prepared with some items that we can talk about. We'll just have a
100%.
chalkboard lesson for the team.
I would love that. And for me, I'll make sure that we schedule more time too as well. I know today I got a little bit behind, so it's my bad. But dude, really appreciate your time. And I have one more question for you, and then I wanted to give you sort of the floor to just kind of like comment or have any like final statement that you feel like you need to say or anything like that. But my last question would be for someone else out there who is either someone who wants to be an entrepreneur or someone that was similarly in your shoes a few years ago working for a financial institution, but was kind of like, I kind of don't know if I feel this, and I kind of think I could do my own thing. What would be your insight or advice for that person who's like, I kind of want to do my own thing in the financial sector, but it's not the norm, and I feel like I'm a little off the beaten path here? What's your insight for that person? Because that was you a few years ago.
Advice is do it. The best piece of advice I think I've ever heard is pretend that there's a movie being made about your life right now, and you are in the loser stage of your life, and you're about to become the hero of your own story. And do the things every day that you would want to be shot in that movie to portray you becoming the hero of your own story.
I love that.
Yep.
Dude.
Pretend there's a film crew behind you. Anytime you feel like doing something that you shouldn't be doing, you feel like taking a nap in the middle of the day, what would the hero of your own story do? Would he get out and run that 5 miles, or would he make those couple calls he has to make, or would he go take the nap? Do the things you're supposed to do.
I love it, dude. Thank you so much for sharing. And by the way, I'm going to put all your information below so people can find you. And if there's anything else you feel like you want to say, feel called to say anything in that regard, please, now's the chance.
I'm good, man. I really appreciate you having me on. Thank you again for your time, brother. It's always a pleasure.
100%, dude. Listen, everybody, Fran Walsh, Opulus, episode 16 of the Legends Find a Way podcast. We out here, baby. Be good and be safe, dude. Much love. Peace, peace.
Peace, peace.